Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Damian Rivera of Damian Rivera Films, and you are tuned into another episode. And this is actually the last episode of season two, and we are starting or ending off with a really amazing, influential person in the dance community, the one and only Mr. Rodney Rodchata Aquino.
Hi, Diamond. Diamond, how are you, man? I mean, it's like I've been looking at your work for the past month. You're doing a great job. Thank you for inviting me.
No, absolutely. And for me, I really want to give my appreciation to you and all that you've contributed to our dance community. And I'm not just saying in the bachata sense, but in our community as a whole, because a lot of times throughout the years, people come and go, and we realize it's really important to appreciate those that put us in these positions, that we're now able to have these events and to see the impact of how bachata specifically has really just like entered into households. I mean, we even seen the DNC just had Prince Royce with the Stand
Isn't,
By Me.
isn't that great, right?
Oh, like it's like it
Awesome.
amazed me. I mean, even though don't get me wrong, the song is like almost 8 to 10 years ago. For me, it was honestly a moment that especially our dance community could celebrate because we realized like, hey, we're being looked at, we're being understood and heard.
Yeah.
And for me again, we're definitely going to get into the beginnings and everything. But for me, I want people to know my first introduction to Rodney was actually last year at the Dallas Bachata Festival with the gentleman by the name of Jorge Elizondo, who is the director and creator of that. And having seen Rodney and seeing the appreciation and the acknowledgement that George had given to Rodney, explaining the history of what you yourself has been a part of for these many years. And it allowed me now to say, let me do my research and let me look up Rodney's experience and realizing how you've had your hands in almost everything. You've really touched, you've had a part in what our community has really become of now and is going to be in the future. But again, I just, this moment here is special because like we've talked privately, this is again another piece of documentation that long after we're gone, people can watch this and understand who Rodney is beyond the stage.
Appreciate that, bro.
Absolutely. And for me, I would love to know. Hold on just one moment.
Sure.
All right. Sorry, guys, just a little technical difficulty. Had to tend to a neighbor's issue. But again, Rodney, I really want to take this time for us now to kind of go really all the way back. But before we do, I always like to let my guests know that during the interview, we will be having comments that are flooding in. And already we have Mr. Mike Bayo here showing some love over here to Rodney. And even Mike says Rodney is a bachata trailblazer as well as a mambo aficionado here.
Yeah, he is. Mike Bello is a good friend. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I was gonna do a festival called Mambo Expo where all the old school, like Frankie Martinez and Sion will be there, and I included them. I included him there. I was like, dude, are you still in the game? It's like, no, I'm an Aida. It's like, no, come on in, dude. We need your musicality expert classes and workshops here, dude. It's like, it's too bad it's not happening this year, but there's next year.
Absolutely. And at least before we get started into understanding the beginnings of your journey, could you give me I mean, I really want to know is from when the bachata dance scene really started to flourish from, I would say, about the 2010s. That's when I really started to see events and congresses and such happening. What is your overall opinion on how the scene has grown thus far?
I think you would have to credit that to bachata festivals. Back then, we were used to salsa congresses, right? We had one of the biggest salsa congress during that time in the early 2000s. We're talking about 2006, 2005 was the San Francisco Salsa Congress hosted by Ricardo and Michelle. and partner up with Albert Torres, of course, at that time. And they were going second with the LA Salsa Congress, which was in itself like a Disneyland type of,
Yes, yes,
it was,
definitely
it
understand.
was big, dude. I mean, it was big, but the second I think that was most well attended with like over 6,000 was San Francisco Salsa Congress. And they know me, they're good friends of mine, and they know that I was into bachata. I probably was the only one, but Ricardo, who is Colombian, and Michelle, who is Filipino, are into the bachata also. I mean, it's also their favorite. So they had me hosted one of those rooms where we could do bachata social. And of course, I was teaching bachata at that time already. So that I think that once some people didn't like it then, they're still having issues. You shouldn't have bachata at Congress. One of them is Mike Bello, and I'm kidding, Mike. I was across him because we have booths, right? As you know, in the Congress we have booths, and Mike Bello is known for playing his salsa music, and Michelle Ricordi told me that in that lobby we're gonna have a bachata party at night. So I was like, we started during the day. It's like, hey Rodney, this is a salsa Congress. You shouldn't be blasting bachata.
I mean, no, and it happens. I definitely have seen that for sure.
I don't remember, but he reminded me, like when I was when he was on my podcast. He remembered, I'm like, oh yeah. But,
my God, and and just seeing the experiences, like you said, like going, you giving that little notion of like the music, how it trend. You can hear it, like, hey, we're at this type of event, but you're blasting this type of music. It's funny.
But the thing, bro, at that time is that there were crowds. They liked bachata. Some of them didn't know it, right? But yeah. They were learning to dance as they were listening to the music. They were trying to figure it out. The only thing at that time is the powers that be that were kind of against it, because it's probably gonna steal whether it's a salsa scene or whatever it is. So it's like, what is this new thing that we need to play at least two songs a night or something?
Yeah.
When I got invited to the 2008 Sydney Bachata Festival, the very first Bachata Festival in the world, there, we had probably about 150 people or so, but those people are from all over the world. We're talking Asia, Europe, USA, of course, and even the Middle East. Okay, so it kind of inspired me, because when I was just beginning in salsa and I was looking at Albert Torres every time on stage, it kind of got inspired. I kind of get inspired, like, I want to do that. I want to organize something. I want to organize a really big party like this. And so when I was at the Sydney Bachata Festival, it just gave me a vision. It's like, I'm going to do this in the United States. They're not going to like it, but we're going to make them like it. There's a difference between focus group. Oh, what do they like?
We're going to see how it pans out.
I don't work like that, dude. So Mike Bello can tell you that I don't work like that. We're going to make them like it because I like it.
I mean, even Mike Bello here says, I yelled, this is a salsa Congress. That was the beginning, at least on the West Coast.
Yeah. And so when we did 2009, I messaged Jorge. I said, Jorge, I'm going to do a bachata festival. I want you to join me. I want you to be my partner. There is an artist from Australia, the co-organizer of Bachata Festival Australia, who's here is doing a boot camp. We might as well do it on that same weekend. We're gonna do the first Bachata Festival in USA. It's like, I'm in. So we were gonna do it in San Francisco, but I was having doubts, like, we're gonna lose a lot of money, man. It's like, because no one likes bachata, And when we did that, about a month later in planning, I had another idea. I texted Jorge, let's do it in Reno. Let's do it in a small town where hotels are cheap, and the Bay Area could travel 4 hours by driving. Not bad, Let's do it. And so when he agreed to that, I called a guy named Bibi in the Reno area who has done some salsa work in the Reno area. And I said, dude, I'm about to do a bachata festival in Reno. Whether you want in or not, I'm still going to do it. So I really want you to be in because you are the godfather in Reno when it comes to salsa. I was like, well, he couldn't say no. You know, and actually, he hosts the Reno Latin Dance Fest right now, which is
Yes.
now one of the largest, bro. Which is now one of the largest. But he was my partner along with Jorge Elizondo. We did that for 3 years in Reno. And then, of course, that was January, and then followed by San Francisco in actuality now, which is 2009. And when we did that, a lot of people came, or like Lee Gringuito, who now organizes DC Bachata Festival.
Yes, DCBX, correct.
Jorge and Leslie, who now organizes LA Bachata Festival. Back then, you know, back then they weren't doing anything. They were just, you know, just, unknown, just like me, you know. But after that festival, bro, by 2010, you're seeing it all over the place. Not just Congress, not just festivals. In studio, the classes are being offered for bachata.
Yes, and that's a big, like you're saying, with the addition of these festivals, like just to see the range of how the bachata scene has really, honestly, in my opinion, has taken over. In the last 10 years, I can honestly say, from being a performer who was a salsa dancer to now being a visual artist that does both genres of salsa and bachata, I've really seen the community of the bachata community just like really just explode because like you said, and we're going to get into, really is understanding that it, from those points of years ago when you only would hear 2 bachata songs, now even when you go to a salsa congress, they expect a bachata room. That's really, like, I've seen a huge shift, you know, and we're definitely going to get into that. But I would love to know, at least from the audience, let's take it all the way back from the beginnings and understanding what really inspired, like, how did bachata kind of come into your life, and how did it really inspire you now to become the entrepreneur?
The music, definitely the music first. I play the guitar, I play the drums, but particularly the guitar. I like lead guitars. I'm a classic rock guy, dude. You know,
how classic though? How classic are we talking?
Oh, you really want to know? We're talking
about like Kiss. We're talking about Motley.
We're talking Deep Purple, bro. We're talking Neil Young. We're talking really Neil Young, or even just Bob Dylan in that sense, because he's getting into that classic rock by then already. So Deep Purple, AC/DC, my favorite. You know, those are all classic stuff. You know. Anyways, the question was, how did it inspire me? How did I start it? Right?
Yes.
Okay. One time, I was at a club called Rocupulco Club in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, and at that time, I had a website called salsagang.com. Maybe Mike Bello remembers that. But so, you know, before bachata, I was into salsa, dude. I was into salsa mambo, you know. And so one of my members, salsagang.com at that time would be the Facebook of today in the dance scene. And it's too bad that our vision was so little that we couldn't think of a Facebook type of idea, you know. So we had to quit it. So the Bay Area salsa scene is looking at that website every time we need to do a review, where we're going and all of that stuff. So I was like, hey, let's go to Acapulco. And then they played this song by Manchi and Alexandra. It's either Dos Locos or something else, but I don't remember the music. And I saw some of my members doing it. It's like, what the hell are they dancing? And so I asked this girl named Tavara. I think she lives in Washington, D.C. now. I said, what are you doing, girl? What is that? And he's like, you know, say, dance with me. He's like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, no, I'll teach you on the floor. What is this? Like bachata? Where you're learning this? Oh, I'm learning it. Well, I'm learning it from Armando. What do you mean? Armando Tam. You're learning it from an Asian guy?
Oh my God!
Dominican dance, you're learning it from Asian guy? and Armando Tam is a Nicoya, you know, he's Nicaraguan. He's half Asian, half Nicaraguan, who is now a prominent chef in the Bay Area. He was the very first guy to ever teach bachata in the Bay Area probably around 1994. I mean, that's freaking way back, bro.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like it. I mean, step, 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 hip, step, step, step,
Yep.
hip. Hop a little bit. Like, I kind of like this. I think I could get along with this. And so that's how I got into it. And then when I lived in New York for like at least a year or so, I was always in the Bronx, bro. I was always, because that's the only way I could go to get a good Dominican food. And suddenly the music they played sounded familiar.
Gotcha.
And then there was a couple dancing there. Now, no dips or whatever, just simple, very close, and that's all they do, enjoying and feeling the music. And I thought that was very inspiring, and it's like, okay, I really want to learn this dance now. And so at that time, I learned it, and then started teaching it. At that time, I wasn't into authentic, traditional bachata yet. Not until I went to the Dominican Republic. That's when I really, okay, this is the style I really want to embrace. So that's how I started. It was at that time Monchi and Alexandra and Aventura. Those were you have to give credit to this group also, because there's music and then there's dance, and they're really the ones, especially specifically Aventura with their album "We Broke the Rules." Really, exploded. So.
No, it's true, and it's like, again, people always remember like the Raulín Rodriguez, the Lloveras, the Luis Vargas, but people also have to understand that around the 2000s, the early 2000s, technology was shifting, music was changing, technology was advancing, and now allowing things like iPods. No longer you have to always wait for a radio channel to hear your favorite songs. Now you could download them, and then realizing now that, of course, like you said, there was salsa before bachata events. It was strictly salsa events, and mainly the mid 90s going forward. But for me, then I would definitely agree is that Aventura, especially in New York City, extremely influential. The early, even to present day, but we have to give appreciation to mainstream artists like those, because they were the introductions into getting into people's ears.
Yeah, back then, when they started, it wasn't Aventura, right? This it's Los Tenieles.
Wow!
Oh yeah,
no, I actually didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that was their first album. Now, if you listen to their music, dude, it's definitely sound like Raulín Rodriguez and Frank Reyes and all of that stuff. Until they did the "We Broke the Rules" thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, now they were taking the influences that they had, and then over time with their music started evolving, they're just overall their influence and their impact started to grow. Yeah. And for me, then a question I definitely have is, when did the love for this, the bachata, then slowly came into becoming more of a teacher aspect of it? When did you feel like, hey, I'm adequate enough and I have enough knowledge thus far that I feel like I can help other people?
I would have never thought to be a dance teacher. I already had two martial arts school at that time, and so I was already busy, but there was no one teaching bachata at that time. Armando Tam stopped teaching bachata because he formed a band called La Verdad. It was a salsa band. And so when he did that, he stopped doing bachata. I was like, no one else is doing it. How the hell are we going to spread this? And so I started doing it. My very first class was in the Oceanside area in San Francisco. I had at least 12. The second workshop, I had probably about 120. That's in the Bay Area, dude. And that was at the Metronome Ballroom area at that time. They're closed now. So when the students were responding, we like your class, we like the way you teach, it's like, maybe I could do this.
Yeah, because
I mean, I was already teaching salsa part-time at the time whenever the house instructor is not in, and then they tap into me in certain nightclubs in the Bay Area. So I was already doing that, but never would I have imagined that I would be teaching bachata the way I knew how,
Yeah.
We were just making up shit at that time, bro.
And I love the honesty and transparency, but it intrigues me too, because a resounding notion or thing I've noticed is that a lot of the salsa dancers that I know, friends or not, just performers in general, a lot of the big they're being salsa dancers, being in the scene, but then you slowly see their transition into going into bachata. And that's really important, because not just for the everyday performer, but for a person like yourself who was first ingratiated with the salsa influence, and then you kind of felt the music with bachata, and that took you over. So I think it's really like, it's important, but it's also very like, it's a coincidence that many of our dancers who are salsa dancers transitioned into bachata. For me, though, I would love to know, because you're from the West Coast and you lived at one point on the East Coast in New York, and you've had that experience. What is, for a person like myself who is a New Yorker, a native New Yorker, what is the scene like in the West Coast from your perspective?
Put LA style there and New York style in the Bay Area, and that's your salsa scene. They could dance on 2, on 1. Some of them do on 5, which is technically on 1, but don't tell them that. But
Oh man!
And then of course we have our Cuban community with the Casino Rueda, and so these are all 3 separate groups, brother. I mean, it's hard to put them in one room. This is why on a given night we have another club packed there and packed here in the same night, you know. But it's just that they think that, a circular dancing can't. We're gonna bump into each other if you're doing linear stuff. It's like, all right, whatever, you know. Yeah. And then the music, of course, they're very particular about the music. But I used to say that salsa dancing, San Francisco Bay Area, is one of the healthiest dance community in the world, and rightfully so, because I mean, we had a lot of competitors. We were competing with each other, but we respected each other at the end of the day, you know, and we support each other at the end of the day. So, it's a mix of everything, dude. We're more like a hybrid, you know.
And oh my God, you said hybrid, and of course, with California just being very eco-friendly, that kind of term, it helps. But you know, for me, and that's important, because like you talked about earlier, the experience you had also in events like the LA Salsa Fest. I have also had that experience. And when you can say like how large it was, like it was the premier, the notable one, that when it was in the tent, when it was like 2,000-3,000 plus people.
10,000, bro, 10,000.
My God. And it's the reach of it, because again, people have to realize New York is kind of seen as kind of really gritty, really like you have to just push and work hard. There's people that come from different states just to live in New York, train, and then go back to where they come from and also help those. And then especially in California, I think also the glitz and glamour and the Hollywood feel of it really attracts people. But it's really awesome to hear that from your standpoint, especially coming from San Francisco, and the word you use as the healthiest, that is really important and such a positive way of looking at it, because so many people just kind of say the same thing of, it was tough, it was hard, it was a lot of dancers, a lot of clubs. But to use that term of healthy is really amazing, because you understand that in this culture, it can be very competitive. And that competitive can turn to greed and resentment. And with like California being so large, it's amazing how many dance schools, how many dance companies, how many dancers come in and out. And for me too, I could, from my standpoint, this is where I can transition now into understanding, when did you feel, or did you feel like you kind of adapted to what the YouTube kind of streaming your content? Did you feel like when you started teaching, you were able to capitalize on that easier, or was that kind of a learning curve for you?
It was a learning curve, bro, because, you know, social media at that time wasn't really that much. We had a website forum type of format where everybody could post what they think or blah, blah, blah. And those were the Facebook social media at that time. So there was not much. Yes, you can videotape yourself, but it would be in a freaking big camera. It's not the things that you could carry in your palm, and you would have to have somebody videotape you. It was not through phone or whatever, as opposed to this day. But we managed. I made my first video series of bachata and merengue. I forgot the year, but it would be Bachata Cornerstone Volume 1, Bachata Intermediate, and then Bachata Advanced, and then Hot Merengue. It was 4 videos. It was sold out the first year, and then I had to reorder. And then when I went all over the world and teach, I took those with me. I didn't take a lot because I was in fear. Like, I already knew what happened to Super Mario at that time, where he got banned in the United States because he brought a lot of videos with him, and at that time, the costume was really strict. In fact, I waited 3 hours in Belgium, Brussels costume. They inspected all my luggage, and then they found DVDs. It's like, what are these? It's like, I'm a dance teacher. They didn't believe me, so they made me dance in front of them.
Customs, actual wow.
I was like, this is what I do. This is what I teach. Because I think at that time somebody told me why they were curious about the DVDs, because they don't want people bringing porn.
Yeah.
So, but those were my experiences, man. That's when I started teaching. I tell you, Sydney Bachata Festival was my start as a international teacher, because that Saturday during that Congress, I get a call from Sweden. And it's like, Rodchata, do you mind coming in here next week and teach at the very first Bachata, Swedish Bachata Festival? I was like, hell yeah. I mean, I could just And then after that, because Europe are all close to each other, the promoters were at one festival and they met me, and now they book me every year. And I had to find a partner. Her name is Camille Yananto Ono. I used to call her Tango. She lives in San Diego, lived in San Diego, now lives in Switzerland. And we traveled all over Europe for 3 years teaching bachata. Yeah.
Wow, and that's important too, like you said earlier, about the first bachata congresses and festivals. And that's really what I want to get into now, is understanding, because again, from your testimony, but also other people that I've talked to, and realized that you were one of the premier figures in the creation of these events. And I remember you said 2008, I believe, was the Sydney event.
Sydney Bachata.
And for me, at that time, I was more of just dancing salsa based. But from your experience, what was that like, being a part of the first ever Bachata festival or congress?
The vibe was great. I mean, it was intimate, as opposed to Salsa Congress, which were bigger, as you know. It was intimate. We knew everyone. We danced with everyone. All teachers were dancing, socializing, everything, Whether there was a room party, we would go there, But the vibe but the dance workshops, okay. Of course, there were some salsa workshops also, just to please everyone, right?
Yeah.
But the bachata workshop, you would notice, brother, if you're from the Bronx and you've seen some real bachata, right? You would notice, like, these people are just making up shit, man.
We're definitely gonna get to that as well. But yeah.
And if you were to ask the people that were there, they will admit it. We were just making up shit.
Yeah. You were trying to appeal to your audience. You were trying to give something,
No, because, look, if you're a salsero, you would do salsa moves, dude, because that's what that's your background. If you're a ballroom, you will do some ballroom techniques with the bachata, because that's your background. Because at that time, you don't know what real bachata is, Yeah. Nevertheless, it was very inspiring. We felt the love. The music, of course, were great, There was even a group called Mojito Project at that time. It was like I think they could categorize that music as a bachata moderna now, because it's almost like a techno or techno bachata. Yeah.
Oh, so you're just saying kind of those the remixes were kind of slowly getting
was the first remix, bro. That was Mojito Project is one of the first remix group that ever did bachata.
Wow. See, that's new information for me. And that's definitely essential because for me, again, I have this type of platform to gain more knowledge and understanding about the field that I'm in. And my thing is this then, as you being a teacher, and like you said, you were teaching, now becoming a bachata teacher, and you were going to have people that loved it, and you were going to have people that hated it and didn't understand. Can you honestly say that when you were teaching, it was all love, or was there that mix of the backlash of what are you doing? What is this art form? How are you respecting it? Did you kind of get that feedback from people?
Not really. It was all love. The only feedback I've ever gotten was more of like a joke, really.
Yeah.
It's sarcasm, but in every sarcasm, there is a bit of truth, right? I was invited to teach at somewhere in Washington
Hmm.
State, Salsa Congress. I was invited to teach bachata there. A long, long time ago, man. Tacoma, Washington. And in the elevator, a bunch of salseros, teachers, including myself, were there. It's like, hey, Rodney, what are you teaching today? It's like, I'm teaching bachata, dude. Dude, are you Dominican? I was like, no. Why are you teaching
Yeah.
bachata? And then everybody laughed. Everybody
Yeah.
laughed. I was like, and so I asked the guys, like, dude, what are you teaching today? It's like, I'm teaching salsa. Of course, it's salsa and It's like, dude, are you Cuban? It's like, no, I'm Mexican. Why are you teaching salsa?
Oh, and
But,
see, like it's a healthy jab because
yes, of course.
there's a difference between being like just disrespectful about it and just having fun with it because also they see that you're treating it
Yeah,
respectfully.
yeah, yeah. You had to treat it respectfully, and you know, the people that really influenced me to change my, I wouldn't say change my style, but to prefer one style, if we could say it that way, which
Hmm.
is, of course, traditional, is really Troy and Georgette, dude. I mean,
Mm.
that Dominican barbershop, bro. That first video, the Dominican barbershop, that video, they probably don't know this, but that influenced a lot of bachata dancers all over the world. If you can only pick one video that really influenced traditional bachata, quote unquote, it's that video. At least in the United States, I think, or Europe.
And this would I would say this would have to been the mid 2000s.
Already, yeah, yeah.
Yes, because I remember Troy and Georgette, the school I was in, they were actually staying in New York because this was right after Katrina. So that was my first understanding. But also seeing now how Troy and Georgette, especially Georgette, has really still kept a name for themselves even years later, and
Yeah.
they and she being just recognized as one of the most fiercest female solo dancers, period, in our community. It
Yeah.
really shows how much people appreciate it. And that's the thing too, is that you being honest and saying like, hey, when I did come out, I had all love, but of course I'd get the occasional jab in because again, sometimes people are just curious. And I tell people it's okay to be maybe naive or ignorant on a situation, but when you then get educated on it, then you should understand how to gauge it. And being honest, like I remember when you talked about bachata mid 2000s, all you really talked about was the musical side.
It really was just the musical side. Yeah.
So the thing was, I saw a shift. It was in 2009 when I met Ataca Alemana in Mexico for Earl
Yeah.
Rush's event,
Yeah.
and realizing like, man, because again, it was a salsa based event, but when you then had Ataca Alemana come, it really just like it shifted the whole event because they saw this art form of two people who not just were dancing but connecting.
Connecting. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
it's the chemistry, the way they look at each other. I mean, you know, whether it's dramatic or just pure romance,
mhm.
it's the very definition of how bachata was really appreciated because, as you know, it's more of like a social. It's never meant to be performed, or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I could say is I definitely want to bring up this was in, I would say, 2011. And I had told you this that I was watching from the past media program Nuevo Tech. which was,
Yes,
in our opinion, like one of the biggest events that honestly, I mean, not biggest events, the biggest like uh, media platforms that our community had at those times.
I
That
agree.
again, that was not just showing performances, but also kind of going behind the scenes and doing what we're doing now, is having a
Yeah,
dialogue and understanding what's the life like for not just a performer, but an organizer as an attendee. And I remember seeing an interview with you and Zeke. Um, and this was, I believe, 2011, and you were finishing an event. It was right after, it was the World Latin Dance Cup, I believe it was.
yeah.
And
We're Latin Dance Cup. Yeah,
yeah, and realizing that I loved about you is that the true honesty in you saying, as a organizer promoter, you're used to not sleeping. And I think that the road of not being able to sleep, you having to focus on everyone else before yourself, but also you then saying, hey, now taking a step away from just being that promoter, now being a judge, and you have to warp your mind and say, okay. And one key thing I definitely loved in what you talked about was saying, we saw now the elevation from the year previous, and you really showing the attention to the detail of saying, I'm happy that we have this type of platform to have dancers come and compete, especially now with bachata becoming now a category,
yeah,
but also you being responsible and saying, hey, I love where it is, but I want to see where it's going to go. And I don't want it to become stagnant. I want it to evolve, because you can't do the same thing every year and expect the same response.
yeah, yeah. That was, dude. That was like an 8 hour, 10 hour judging session. You know, and we're Latin Cup. That's a lot of competitors, and of course the when you judge a bachata competition, it's pretty much the same as the as far as the judging sheet, the judging criteria. It's pretty much the same: timing, presentation, technique, whatnot. You know, it's pretty much the same, but it's never really specified there whether, you know, what makes it bachata type of thing. And Billy Fajardo at that time was the head judge. I always sat beside him when we judged together. We would hit butt, dude. It's like, there is really nothing you can do with bachata. You have to do all of these things. I'm like, yeah, but that's not bachata. We would argue about. You know, Billy,
Oh,
he would
yes.
speak his mind, bro. He's a
Absolutely.
New Yorker, man. It's like,
Yeah.
I love him for that. I really do. And that's always been my debate with him. And with Albert at the time, it was just a matter of, dude, if no one is participating, we can't really impose this type of rules. And you already know that at that time, the social dancers, the bachateros, that loves the uniqueness of bachata, they don't have the desire to compete. What for? You know? And so but my plan at that time was to change it. And I tried. At one point I had what I call Bachata Gold Cup.
Mm-hmm.
The participation is specifically to the authentic side. It just doesn't exist. That's just the way it is, you know. And I gave it up.
Yeah, and the thing is to hear from you as a business person, realizing that, hey, you're going to try something, it might work or it might not, but realizing that you're trying to do something to push the culture forward. Because going after Sydney, and now you being able to say, like, hey, now I really want to focus on running my own events, because again, this art form of bachata, as we all know, at one point was secluded to 2-3 songs in a room at a salsa congress, and
Yeah,
then slowly really, or yeah, slowly evolved into, okay, now we have a bachata room. Oh, now we have bachata in competitions. Oh, now we have bachata festivals and congresses. And for me, I think, in my opinion, the biggest thing was that when it came to the bachata dance community and the salsa community, the biggest difference was the competition factor. Because again, bachata was really slowly creeping, while salsa was kind of set in stone. Competitions were endless, congresses were endless. But I think the atmosphere of the people was different, because the bachata enthusiasts, the bachata lovers, weren't focused on competition. It was more about just having fun, from my point of view. That's my experience. I would say maybe 2013, 2014, I slowly, especially in New York, I slowly started to see groups then creating a bachata routine or entering into a competition and seeing how it goes. But then seeing also now the love and the support that now the salseros were giving the bachata. I mean, don't get me wrong, when it came to events, there was a point that salsa was everything. Salsa
Yeah,
was it, bachata and other genres, unfortunately, were taking a back seat. But
yeah.
then to see the shift, I would love to know from your standpoint, when did you notice that shift really publicly, that bachata was really kind of taking over this kind of dance culture, Latin dance culture?
By 2011, when everyone else that were in that festival in Reno and San Francisco started organizing one themselves in their own city. We're talking Christian Sola with the Unity in Florida. We're talking Jorge Anlesa in LA, Gringuito, Nanda Castillo in Brussels, Arthur from Poland. This couple, I forgot their name. I think they're called Souls. I forgot their real names, but I worked with them on the second one, Lithuania
Mhm.
of all country, and then of course Tony Lara in both Italy and UK. So, dude, I mean, you're just talking about all over the place already at that time, and that's when I knew that by 2010, 2011, I was like, this shit is going to take over salsa. And at one point, I think I posted that on Facebook, and I got a lot of heat for it.
Of
What are you talking
course, of course, and you know, even
You're
before we
crazy.
keep, even before we keep going, like I'm so happy to see that Jahira Fajaldo, all the way from the West Coast in Oakland, she, you know, her posting on here, and she's even saying, Rodney showing them guns.
I love those couple. I
Yeah.
love them so much. I support them, and they're at my festival. They support me also, and I want to give a shout out to them because in the short period of time they they've gone to the top there. You know, because they started here, right? But in a short period of time, they gone to the top there because they had a good attitude and they had good passion. So
Yeah, and that's amazing because again, that also shows the support factor that
yes,
of what you speak of
yeah,
having being from the San Fran area, and you guys really just appreciating one another because
oh yeah,
everybody wants to be a dancer at one point in that community. Once there's a difference between then being a performer or just being a social dancer.
absolutely,
There's that boundary, but then also there's a difference between being a performer and being an organizer, the
yes.
relationship. And for me, this is a question, even before we get to that. Jahira, she's like, you know, I love you so much. You're a great role model. And again, and Sebastian James saying, Rodney gave me my first opportunity to DJ at a Congress. Shout out to him as a promoter and as a person.
DJ Sebas is one of my favorite DJ.
You know, and again, this is why I appreciate that to have you on here, because to show that, you know, so many people will reach out and just to send their love to you because the impact you've made, and realizing that you really being there towards the heyday of the bachata dancing scene. Of Because again, the first event was not in the US. The first
No,
event was in Sydney. And a
it's
lot
an
of
Australian.
people, yeah, and a lot of people who are in this dance community, they're just focused on dancing and socializing, but there are also people who are focused on that and more. And they want to know the history of, because all you really know sometimes is the artists, the musical artists that create the songs we dance to. But
Yes.
now hearing from people like yourself that were the key parts and members in having these events that started across the world and then reached into the US. And for me, a question I have definitely is, as a promoter and organizer of events in the US, but also traveling around the world, what do you feel like are key differences between the United States atmosphere of dancing and then abroad?
Yeah, you know, in a sense, yes, because if you're talking Europe, the only person who was doing it at a hotel at that time was Tony Lara. Everybody else was doing it at a club or a studio. So when you get invited as an artist, like me, for example, they would rent an apartment for me. They would pick me up when it's time for me to teach a workshop and go to a different location. And that night they would pick me up again to go to a different location for social dancing. And they called that a festival. Here in the USA, we don't do that, man, because if we do that, somebody's going to say, that's not a Congress. That's not a festival. It's not in a hotel where you do it in one place at one point in 3 days in the same place and you don't leave. That's a Congress, because that's what we were used to, which was an example of Albert Torres and David Melendez at that time. It's like, yeah, that's a salsa Congress, and so we weren't used to that. But I would say that the difference is key here, because the promoters in the Europe made money. The USA didn't. Why? Budget. When you do it in a club, in a studio, you don't spend as much money as you do it in a hotel in the United States. And you know how hotels are in the United States, man.
Yeah.
They're like car sales.
I think you even came, I saw a video, you came to New York and you were talking about like the seasons, how it depends on the seasons when.
Yeah. And so that in itself is the difference. When it comes to bachata, number one, really, at that time, at least what I feel, I don't know now, is social dancing. That's all they want to do, because they just want to hug someone, bro. At that time, bachata is intimate. Oh, I don't have to do fancy moves, right? Mm-hmm. But now it changed, because as it progressed, it evolves, innovation happens, and so that's where it is. Whether it's just the dancing part or even the organizing part, it evolves. As you know, now there are several rooms. Even they include kizomba, right?
Kizomba, zouk, yes. And for me, it's important that we understand these things, because us being in the United States, most of the time, all we see are visuals, but also the information you're giving as an organizer saying this is the difference is the budget. Because it's like you said, in many, and especially in the United States, when we're doing events pre-COVID, when you're having hundreds of people and you have to worry about filling up blocks of rooms in order to, and people have to understand, I've learned this from many promoters and they've told me this, whenever you're doing a festival, the first year, more than likely, you're not going to break even. You'll be lucky if you break even. Most of the time you have a 1 to 3 year window where you're going to understand the success rate and the failure rate. It really depends on, are you willing to stay in it long term or short term? But now, from one point being a performer and just focusing on what I do on stage, but now being a visual artist and also having that relationship with the organizers, because we are in charge of putting out content that promotes this business. Correct. These conversations I have with these organizers, because I want to pick their brain and understand what's important to them. Because again, the event is held for us to dance, but they also need to put butts in the seats. They also need to recoup. They also need to have a budget is key. But like you're saying, in overseas, they were actually a little bit more in tune and saying, hey, I have a studio here. I can just fill hundreds of people here, save tons of money. And don't get me wrong. And even in the US, you've seen it. But I think the European sector really capitalized, because I was seeing events from like London of festivals or a Congress, but it's in a dance studio.
Not to mention the artists are just nearby. You know what I mean? Yes, they're from another country, but the flight is just half hour.
and that's the thing too, because like you said, within the budget, we're talking about bringing artists from all over the world. Right. Truly, right. So you have to recoup. But like you said, in Europe, you're literally half hour, an hour away on a boat.
You take the train.
You take the train. And that too, it's like, because again, in the US, we really thrive, or a lot of organizers thrive on bringing that influence from overseas, because that's what the spectators want to see.
I have a take on that, bro. I think that our US talents are not marketing themselves enough. I see Ataka Alimana who have successfully marketed themselves ever since that Tampa video that they had, the very first one, which was very popular, that hit probably what, 5-6 million hits now or something, or
Yeah.
more. I mean, who would have thought, right? And that was just a simple video, as you can see.
Yeah.
You know, and the second one is Christian Solo's Sensual Bachata at that time, which was, I think, the second most viewed bachata video. But the Europeans, the way they market themselves, whether just a picture, whether just a video, it's high quality, dude. I mean, we're talking professional. That to this day, I think, because visually they're so popular and people can see them, and so therefore the customer's like, no, I want those couple because I get inspired by those couple. As opposed to our talent in the USA, that if they can only market themselves just like the Europeans, I think we'll be on equal footing, because our USA talents are as talented as the Europeans, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for me, I would love to know, as a dancer who became a teacher, and we're talking about Bachata Moderna, as you call it. I really would love to gauge your opinion on when you had, because when Atagalamana came and that was known as Bachata Moderna, and then you started seeing an influx of people now having little festivals, little events, and people started dancing. But then now in the last 5-6 years, I can say that when it comes, because again, we had like Bachata Fusion with George.
sure.
But then when you had Sensual Bachata, for me, my introduction was Corky and Judith and
Sure.
Daniel and Desiree.
Yeah.
But realizing I would love to know from a person who's taught for so many years in Bachata Moderna, what was it like when you were introduced to Sensual and the impact that had on the dance community?
At that time, it depends on what I felt at that time, because at that time I was very draconian when it comes to bachata. I bought into the authenticity factor.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh hell, man, you guys are not dancing bachata. That's that's false advertising, and you title it bachata. But ever since then, I changed my mind about that. I evolved, because we know everything evolved. In fact, I don't call Sensual Moderna as evolution. I call it innovation. It is
Mm.
bachata, but it's an innovation. Because you can't, when you call it evolution, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there should still be the structure elements there. Whether it's evolved, you could still see the authentic original structure elements there because of the evolution. If you claim that word, but if you think of innovation, then that's a different story. And that's what I feel now. Sensual didn't come about at that time. I think that from what I heard, Corke developed it really early also. And a lot of people think it's Zouk. He disagrees with that, right?
Mhm.
Although there are some elements of Zouk there. It's beautiful to watch, by the way. I mean, we're talking about linear and then circular, right?
Yeah.
We know for a fact that Sensual is a circular type of dance. They use the floor all over the place, whereas the Bachata Moderna, it's more linear. Right here, right here.
Yes.
It's linear. We're doing the salsa patterns and all of that stuff. Dominicana, however, you have this compact space. You could practically dance in a small circle of table. You stand a couple there, and they would just do their thing and not get out of that space. So that's because it's very, very much Cuban influence as far as bachata is concerned. Bolero, son, and all of that stuff. So, but yeah, I've seen the difference there. Nowadays, I welcome it. I think that they all can coexist.
Mhm.
They can respect each other. I know there will be other few draconians there, purists as we call them, that they just can't accept it. It's a fact of life. Everything evolves. Everything is innovated. You can welcome them, yet you could prefer just one style because you feel it. And for me, I do prefer traditional, because I feel the old music and I feel just the compact type of dance. And of course, my favorite footwork, So
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that again, what you were talking about with Sensual Bachata, that it was a difference between the Moderna because it seemed more flashy, more
yeah,
attention grabbing. So I think as the times evolve, generations evolve, the attention to detail, but the kind of quick attention span that people have, they would want to see something that opens their eyes. And at one point, salsa was that. That
yeah,
was the premiere. And at one
yeah,
point, when Ataca Alemana came, that was the Bachata Moderna. And then when Sensual started coming, so again, we see the evolution, but realizing from a person like yourself that has been in it so long, but appreciates, because again, you can have your opinion on what you choose to prefer,
sure,
but you appreciate that nonetheless, bachata, whether it's sensual, moderna, traditional, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, it's bachata.
correct, correct.
And for me, being in this kind of community for 5+ years thus far, I've always said that I love the art form, but I want to know about the people that inspired these events, because again, everything is, we can all have fun and dance, but is that when we have a place to go to that we can socialize amongst other dancers, but appreciating the organizers like yourself that put in the long hours, that put in the money, that understand there might not be a return now, but there will be a return later. I think we have to give our promoters and organizers so much more love and appreciation and thanks, because again, it is people like you and others that really are allowing, or at one point were allowing us to come together, because it's not easy.
The promoter's life is it's up and down, bro, as opposed to the artist. The artist will always get gigs. They will sign a contract, and they would, the promoters would follow the contract and whatnot. The promoters is not guaranteed. It's like playing Texas poker, right? It's always going to be all in. It's always going to be all in when it comes to the poker game. And that's promoting, because I think that 90% of the promoters are really just passionate about the dance in itself. And 10% of them are business minded. So therefore, they have to measure it into the account. Not until my wife got in with organizing my festivals that she was able to manage. I am not a good manager, dude. I'm just an idea guy. I'm just a visionary guy, but I cannot. I mean, I can't, because you're talking about organizing a house party.
Yeah.
And when it's in your house, you want to do everything, and you want to invite everyone because it's going to be fun, not knowing the cost
Yeah.
of the food and how you're going to transport them and everything. My wife is a logical person. Is like, you cannot go over the budget. You're going over the budget. It's like, no, I have to go over the budget. If you go over the budget, I'm going to quit. It's like, okay, I can't go over the budget.
Yeah,
You need
you got to listen. You got to listen at times.
any promoters like that need a person like that. And I think that if Albert Torres had that type of person, Choco had that type of person, I think that they wouldn't have been suffering as much as I as I do during the festivals. Because
you're right. You're right. Absolutely, because I mean, I also have my personal experience with Choco, and understood too is that, hey, a lot of times people don't realize the emotional toll, the mental toll, that when you're as an organizer of an event that hundreds or thousands of people go to, the great lengths that you have to go in order to attempt to have a successful event, because everybody sees, oh, we're having all these performers and they're performing and they get to socialize with us, but you don't realize how much money in the hole that a lot of these organizers are in when everything settles, when everything is done and you have to go over everything. That's what a lot of people don't think about.
A lot of people don't, especially if they never organize anything, particularly a Congress in that big setting. I felt sad when Choco died. I felt sad when Albert died. I felt sad when David died. Yeah. David died of cancer. but Albert was a sudden death, and of course Choco was also a sudden death. And those individuals, I was just talking to them a few days before they died,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very sad for me, because sad and glad. I tell you why. Sad because they died and they were suffering, and glad because they died doing what they love to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any other things that they're gonna do, and so they died what doing what they love to do. And so, this is the reason that in one of my congress, the San Francisco Bachata Festival is now owned by my wife, because I feel that if I ever pass away,
Mm-hmm.
that would be my legacy.
Yeah.
And she knows that she's going to continue that. So
Absolutely, and again, it's like you want to leave something behind that's valuable, and realizing that you having the opportunity of creating the San Francisco Bachata Festival, and realizing all of the attendees throughout the years that come to these events and appreciate what you're doing, and realizing that, because again, what we have to realize is start thinking ahead. Long after we're gone, what is the impact that we have left on our community? And for me, like I've told you and others, is that I do this type of platform because I want to appreciate, but also learn from people like you on how to become better. Because as a former performer, as a visual artist, and now a public speaker, eventually I want to be able to have my own event, but I also want to be able to work with people like yourself and pick your brain and understand how to do it the correct way.
right.
And, even as we're talking, we're getting love all the way from your man Daniel Chong from London. It's like, this is, again, this reach of people listening and people understanding. And even Juan Mejia says San Francisco 2017 was the best. And, it's just like, I wish I could have been there. And those are the type of events, it's like, man, you just see how much people appreciate what you've done because you bring a smile to people's face.
Man, you're invited. When this pandemic is over, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
You're definitely invited. Chongo from England is partner up with Pebbles. Believe it or not, that's the name, Pebbles, who is Filipina, and Chongo, I believe, is Taiwanese, if I'm not mistaken. And they performed one time at Tony Lara's Sexy and Sensual event. I saw them on stage, like, that is great. For the first time, I see an Asian couple kicking ass, man.
Yeah. But no, and no, I'm sorry. And the way you said that, it makes so much sense, because I want to say this. When it came to salsa, and me being in the salsa game for a long time, I'm going to be completely transparent and honest. The Asian groups that were performing, the ones like Salsa Sunrise, I'm talking about going way back. People have to understand there was a stereotype of Asian dancers as being very demure, very technical, very precise, but the energy wasn't as like,
it was robotic.
Yes. But for me, I appreciated that.
No, dude, I was in that era. I felt that when it comes to Latin dancers looking down at the Asians, and I don't blame them, because at that time we were robotic. Even when they were trying to imitate Frankie Martinez, putting their shoes in their back pocket and everything, it's still, there was no flavor like Frankie had, but look at them now. I mean, they came a lot. I mean, Koreans, Japanese, badass, man. I mean, they're kicking ass right now. And so when I see Asians like that, I want to feature them, because 50% of my artists at any given festivals that I do, they're either unknown or underrated. I do that in purpose because I was one of them. I would like to promote the hell out of them, expose them, because when the customers see how good they are, that's their start, Yeah,
and that's the thing, is that having a person like yourself that can say you came from that bottom that many people talk about, because again, every dancer, in my opinion, no matter if you're classically trained or not, you have to start from a bottom tier and working your way up. Because even as classically trained as you are, once you come in this community, you realize there's someone else that went down the same road as you, and you guys are heading on the same path. But it's not about clashing. It's about merging. It's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
being able to say, I love what you do and I love what you do, and let's come together. And for me, it's awesome that I could be able to have you on today and pick your brain and learn what it's like to be an organizer, learn what it's like or what it was like for you to be influenced by this and the toll it took and the people you've met. Because again, I think it's more important than ever that besides appreciating the dance artists, we have to appreciate these promoters like yourself. Because without these events, it would be very hard for these artists just to travel, just to go to a dance studio. A lot of them, it's like, hey, I want to go to an event that has so many people and I can impact them. So for me, it's like I'm grateful to have you on.
One lasting note here, bro, about the artist. They really understand what I do. They become good friends of mine, whether the festival is successful or failure.
Mm-hmm.
They stick by me because they know my passion. They know what I'm promoting. I'm not in it for the money. I just want, which is pretty much accomplished now. Bachata is all over the world.
Yeah.
And at two of my festival, which is San Diego and Hawaii, I am much promoting more of the traditional value and traditional crowd. So I cater to them, specifically the Hawaii. It's called the Dominican Expo. And this, like Edwin Ferreras, like Juan Mejia, Melanie, Carlos Cinta, even Ran Swarson, Sebastian, they know what I go through. And they don't have to really wonder whether I'm telling the truth or not. They just have to look at the crowd, and they're in all the way. They support me, and I appreciate.
Absolutely. And like the people you just said, I've met them myself and just realizing that how, especially with the Bachata community, people are having these discussions that we have. People are saying, hey, if we want to see the change that we want to see so bad, we have to make it ourselves. Yes. And realizing now, even with COVID, now we're in a new normal. And again, It's like events are not going to be the same, but they're going to learn to adapt. Because again, I've realized that COVID-19 hits our dance community harder than ever because we thrive on connection. We thrive on being close. So again, we have to realize like, hey, we need to be safer more than ever. So in return, in the future, we then can come together and appreciate one another. And again, we might not be able to come now, but I know in the later future we can, because again, I would rather come back to a scene that is healthier, but also smarter. Agreed. I could understand when people want to do events now, but again, if you're not going to do it safely and respectfully, there are going to be people like myself that will call that out because again, what is it in the long run you're looking for? Are you just looking to make a buck? Or are you looking to do this for the people? So again, I tell people, I encourage people to just have safety guidelines, just the simple stuff. I mean, it really isn't that hard. It's just, if you choose to, but for me, honestly, I really thank you so much. Like this.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely. Because I think more than ever people, and I've had discussions with other artists that say sometimes they feel that they don't get the quote unquote recognition or the appreciation. But for me, it's like, hey, if I can have a platform to bring people like you on so you can share your story, not me tell your story for you, but you to share your experiences without bias or judgment and realizing that this is a safe space. That's why I do it. Because again, when we're at these congresses, we really don't have these moments. Or if we do, it's usually privately when we're away from everyone. So having this time to express what we do talk about at these events, but express it publicly is special because, you have people here in these comments that truly appreciate you. Like Maria here says, she thanks you for giving a platform to new artists. And it means, and that's what it's about, because you are respected by these newer artists. And then again, when after you're long gone and they're older and things, and now they'll be able to share that same love with newer artists. And at least before we go, I would love for you, if you have any last words for myself and the audience here.
I think that passion is everything. Everything you do, whether you're DJing, dancing, teaching, performing, promoting specifically, Passion is everything. If you don't have that, the people around you and the people you teach can sense that. You got to be authentic. Okay? It doesn't matter. You got to be authentic, because authenticity goes a long way to the people you deal with. And if they know this, they will support you. If they know your passion, because they are also passionate themselves, they will support you. And it's all about, really, it's all about passion and vision. That's another one. You got to have vision. You got to know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, why are they going to follow you? You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to have the knowledge, you can't
Yep.
just do things and expect people are going to understand. And again, you giving these gems of information on, hey, if you want to be an organizer, you really have to think about a budget, but also you have to have people in your corner. They're going to tell you yes, but also no.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you when things are going well, but they're also going to tell you when, hey, pump the brakes a little bit. Let's reconvene. Let's restructure, because again, you don't want to be doing an event for 1 to 3 years and not making any type of return, but not realizing
Right.
what you're doing wrong.
Right.
And for me, this was a really great interview that we could have today, because as now a public speaker that I am, I'm learning so much from people like you, because in the future I would love to have an event, but learning all this information from you helps me more.
I'll
And
be
it's
there, man. I'll be there.
absolutely. And
Just let me know.
again, I'll definitely come out to San Fran and
Yeah.
other places. And just again, this is about connecting and networking and realizing. And one thing I would say, at least before we go, is something Mike Bayo says is the interviews also maintain the connection with those who've impacted. And that's the most important, because a lot of people who probably feel the exact same way as I do about you, they never really got the chance to tell you, because you're so all over the place at these
yeah.
events. So it's like to have those moments of saying, wow, I can listen to an interview with Rodney, learn a lot more information, how he started, what his ideas are. And I can even leave a comment or share this to say, like, man, thank you for what you're doing for our community. Because a lot of times people leave because they say, I'm putting my all into it, but I'm not getting anything back.
Right.
So, again, I appreciate you coming in. And, at least before we go, I would love if you can to give us any contact information so people can, reach out to you or see what you're doing next.
You probably already know, ladies and gents, I have 3 accounts on Facebook. So I'm all over the place. Even if you just Google my name, Rodchata, it will tell you where to go, really. Although I have a new thing, the podcast that I do. It's not really a podcast per se.
I've been watching it myself.
It's a YouTube cast, which it's really pre-recorded. And, I'm not doing anything right now due to COVID. So I'm bored. So what if I create something that I could invite my friends who I haven't talked to in a long time, and just hang out. And that's exactly it. And we go from sexual harassment to martial arts to bodybuilding, and teaching. And so it's Rodchata Aquino on YouTube.
Awesome. And, again, everybody, I really do hope you do reach out to Rod and then pick his brain as well, because this is a person that we have in our scene that I know is not going anywhere, and knows that in the future when we can have these events, yes, that, in the future when we can have these events, we can have people that, we can come up to you at these events, even how busy as you are, and just say, thank you. Because a lot of times just those 2 words alone mean a lot, because, again, being you as a promoter and me as a visual artist, I know what you go through. I know the countless hours you don't sleep. I know everything that you're focused on, what's going right, what's going wrong. But again, I definitely appreciate you being on the platform today out there in California. I hope all is well. Even before we go, we have my boy Alejandro De La Torre here, who is watching as well. And
Alejandro is a good guy. He invited me once to judge his very popular professional Jack and Jill
at Granada.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and even Mike Bayo says here Looking forward to the next Silicon Valley Mambo
Yeah,
Expo.
that's the next project of mine. It's a crossing finger type of project because I don't know if it'll work or not,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Absolutely, and again, Rodney, I thank you so much for taking your time to just speak to me, but also seeing how many people are connecting with you as we speak. So, I thank you for being my last interview of season 2, and I've learned so much. But definitely, again, like I tell all my guests, this is our first interview, but I hope it won't be our last, and I hope later on this year I can have you on so we can get more of an update on what you're up to, what your visions are for 2021 and more. So, I definitely thank you so much again for coming on tonight, taking your time out to speak to me and educate myself and others. And I definitely hope you stay safe out there in California.
Yeah, bro. We went over an hour. Isn't that great? But
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's insightful. Really, it's just about having people digest, being able to digest. Even Maria here saying a really insightful interview, and thanking us because, again, this is what it's about. With quarantine going on, people have time. I want people to be able to listen to great information, informative information that's not just back and forth. It's just me simply listening to you and learning from you.
well, thank you, Diamond, for the invite. Maria, when this pandemic is over, I'll be in TO, just like a New York minute. I'll be there. But let's settle this pandemic first. Other than that, thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. I hope you stay safe out there. Everyone stay safe in your homes and check up on your loved ones. And until next time, thank you again, Rodney, and have a good rest of your week.
Ciao, my friends.
Ciao.